Good day, viewers, and welcome to the analysis. Here with me, looking at the 1914 amalgamation. So, uh, we're trying to understand how Nigeria came to be and what really happened when the north and the south of Nigeria, two separate British colonies, brought together, called the amalgamation. So on Monday, when we premiered, I took us back to a brief history of when Britain was actually trying to exert their influence in the western coast of Africa. So if I could just recap what we discussed on Monday. So on Monday we looked at when Britain sent their first gunboat to Lagos in 1925. We also looked at when Queen Victoria became Queen of England in 1933 and pursued this aggressive British Empire and built it to an enviable height, at which she did with over 200 ships. And fast forward to that, around the 1950s, Britain started coming close to Nigeria. In 1951, they opened a consulate in Lagos. And in 1961, there was a fight between Oba Kosoko and Dosumu family, who were the monarchs in Lagos, and they supported Dosumu to. Dosumu was the king, so they signed a treaty with Dosumu to say the Queen of England, let me not say Queen Victoria, and her successors will be the beneficiary of Lagos. Other than that, they were going to bomb. So after then, Britain was just trying to withdraw. Now, I told us that it was two systems they were using, the system of slavery and the system of colonialism. So Britain had come on the guise or on the premise that they want to stop slavery. So remember that when Queen Victoria became queen in 1833, they abolished the slave trade. It was much later in America in 1865. So Britain has sent gunboats to stop the American vessels, the French vessels, and several other vessels from capturing slaves. So in order to effect their task, they needed to have a base. They already had a base in the Gold Coast. So now they needed to have a base in Western Nigeria. And another thing was that they saw that the French was already colonizing quite a lot of swaths of land in Africa. So the French are taking Tunisia, they've taken Libya, they've taken Morocco, and several other places, even what we now know as Niger. I told us it used to be French Sudan. So they contemplated giving Nigeria Sudan as well. So which was later changed to Niger area. And I told us the name Nigeria actually came from Negro. So they called it Negro area. Those were the documents of Flora Shaw, who proposed the name when she was working with the Times, because Nigeria was with a company. So they thought of several names. So fast forward, it was first a trading post. So when they run it as a trading post, as they opened a company, mind you, they had a consulate. So they had Lagos as the colony when they colonized. They actually colonized Lagos in 1861, 6th of August, 1861. So they ran it as colony and then they opened the Royal Niger Company, and they were going from left to right. Some places they were capturing, some places they were signing treaty. So they signed treaty with Ilaro in 1891. They signed treaty with Alaafin of Oyo in 1893. They signed several treaties. They deposed Oba Ovurame in 1897. In 1884, when Britain was having challenges, so when the Royal Niger Company was having challenge, they now called the British government to take over the Nigerian country. Well, the southern, it was South then, to take it over. So they went to Berlin Conference in 1884/1885. They concluded that conference in February 1885. So the person who represented the Royal Niger Company was Goldie, who had to raise about £1 million. So they sold the Southern Protectorate to Britain for £865,000 then. So when there was between 1898 and 1899, when there was a heated argument between Britain and France, that's when they called the British government. So first it was with Colonial Office. So from the Colonial Office, they transferred it to the Foreign Office. We have it today as the Foreign and Development Commonwealth Office, FDCO or FCDO. So today we're going proper into the document. So we would understand what was in the head of Lugard when he was amalgamating this country. We'll look at statistics, facts. We'll look at figures. He quoted some amounts. We'll look at those amounts and see what they really meant, and the ethnography, the religion, the population of Nigeria as at that time. Mind you, the population of Nigeria is estimated to be around 200 million people. And that population, more than half, more than 50%, is living below abject poverty. And not only that they're living below abject poverty, quite a lot of them have no hope. So 6.6 million are being added to the poverty line every year. And in 2021, that number increased to 8.6 million. So we don't know what 2022 would bring. Remember, in 2021, we had COVID in 2020. So in 2021, the number went up significantly higher. And now that we have a major destabilization, we don't know what's going to happen. ASU is on strike. All university activities are paralyzed. And we see our politicians sending their children abroad. Quite a lot of Nigerians were trapped in Ukraine, in the crisis there. So quite a lot of things going on. So without wasting much time. So if you need the document, if you message the number on your screen, then we would be able to send you a copy. So if you need a copy of the 1914 amalgamation document, just message that. Don't call, just message that number, and we will forward the copy to you so that you can follow it as we analyze it. So the first thing on the list, so Lugard titled it Amalgamation of Northern and Southern Nigeria. And I talked briefly on Monday about why amalgamation, why not marriage? Because we've termed it Ìgbéyàwó tipátipá. So we say marriage is between two people, whereas amalgamation is between, you could merge companies together, you could merge colleges together, you could merge businesses together. So it's quite a lot of things that you could do when it gets to amalgamation. So just a moment, so that I'll just for those who need the cop for those who need the copy, if you message the number on your screen, then we will try as much as possible. It's in PDF, so you can follow it as we go along. You can follow it as we go along. So the first thing it talked about introduction and preliminaries to amalgamation. So Lugard was trying to describe this land. The land is not virgin. Unlike South Africa, when Britain got there, the Boers were there. So there was a war between Britain and the Boers. The Boers are the Dutch. So they fought for about 3 years between 1902 and 1902, 1903 to 1905. So they fought them. So Lugard was trying to analyze the preliminaries to amalgamation, what really happened before amalgamation. So the general character of Nigeria, the geography, and the climate. So he said before dealing with the amalgamation of the two separate entities, what he's going to do is he will perhaps sketch a brief characteristics of each of the two colonies. So he talked about the north and he also talked about the south. So he said the north was about 255,700 square miles, and that of the southern Nigerian colony included the colony of Lagos, which consists of 76,700 square miles. So he talked about the north being a dry zone. The central portion of the north consists of Zaria, Bauchi, and also formed the Plateau, which we now have today as Plateau season. He talks about Hamatan there, and they've got hot sun and especially cooler nights. And then on the other hand, he talked about the southern Nigeria that has a thick forest. So it's located on the equatorial rainfall. So well, they say the land in the south are low-lying lands. It's got watershed. Is the south is divided by two rivers. You know, there are no major rivers not that there are no rivers, but the major rivers in Nigeria, one is coming from Republic of Benin, which is traveled as far as Senegal, and the Benue, which is also come from the east. So he said the south is divided by two rivers. So for majority of us who have traveled past Lokoja, you will actually see the confluence where those rivers meet. So it says some 250 miles from its mouth to the coast is a sharp inclination to the west. And he also said that it's about 700 miles from the Cameroon frontier east to Jebba. So French territory. So he talked about Calabar being to the east. He talked about the Delta and then the creeks. So that is his description of the place. So which we all basically know now: the north, the south, southeast, southwest. So Lugard now went into ethnography. He went into population, and he went into religion. So now, for population, he has this to say. So he said the north was one of the most populated places in Africa as at that time. It was so it had until 1900, when he took over as commissioner. The north so their population had dwindled in the north when he took over. And what happened was, he said Bat described it 60 years ago, that there was this, this holy jihad that they fought. Basically, the Fulani started fighting from 1804 to about 1840, so conquering most of the Fulani land. So he said they've dwindled to about 9 million in the north. So the place to the north, was so Lugard described north up until Ilorin. So Ilorin and those axes were part of the north. So he counted Ilorin's population, even though they were Yorubas, he counted them as north. So what happened before Lugard came? Egerton was the high commissioner or commissioner, or whatever you call them, in the south. So Egerton was arguing that Ilorin, which is a Yoruba-speaking town, should be part of the south. But some British senior officers in the Foreign Office did not agree because of the history that the Fulani conquered Ilorin. So he said there's been tribal war in the north. There's been slave raids by the Fulani, and they were dreaded, but they've not been able to penetrate the south. He said, as much as they are being feared, they've not been able to conquer the south, which is predominantly Christians, Yoruba. We also have Muslims then, but they're not as much as but he didn't even call them Christian, because at that time he said they were more of fetish worshippers. Excuse me, they worshipped, they were more of pagans. So listening to what Lugard says, he said these tribes are of purer Negro stock. I don't know why you use that language there, but in 1900, I presume that language was very much allowed. So he said they were of purer Negro stock than the Hausa and other Negroids of the north. So he said the north, the people he found in the south of Nigeria are very much different from the people in the north. So we are pure Negro. I told you our name came from Negro, because the argument was, when they were thinking of what's the name to give to the country, they thought of Sudan. Sudan was one of the names that came up prominently, and they rejected, and that's because the north of Nigeria was Sudan, and they said it would be confusing. So what Flora Shaw wrote, that this is a Negro area, and no other place in Africa has been called as such. So let's call it Negro area, and that's how they came about the name Nigeria. So he's now saying the people in the south are purer Negro. They are different from the Hausa and other Negroids of the north. So he went on to say the people in the south pride themselves as agriculturalists. So we pride ourselves as agriculturalists, and we also have the people in the creeks who are fishermen and trade in all sorts of seafood. So he said from the very early age, the influence of Islam manifested itself in the north. So the majority of the traditional rulers in the north practice Islam. So, before the Islam conquest, we had the Songhai Empire. So the Songhai Empire extended from far away Mali, Chad, up until Yola in Nigeria. So that's where That's where the Songhai Empire extended up to. So when the Songhai Empire basically went into comatose, the Fulani swept in, excuse me, from 1804 with jihad. So the Fulani started conquering most parts of the northern belt of Nigeria. So the system of taxation in the north was highly developed, and the form of administration was highly centralized. So if you look at that word, their system was highly centralized. And that is what Nigeria is practicing today because of the contraption we now find ourselves. So the northern people do not like devolution of power. So everything has to be in the center. The police must be in the center, the navy center, the military center, this center. So everything was centered, which is not good for any empire. If you look at all the empires of the world, it is centralization that has brought them to their knees when they want to centralize. Because let's take, for instance, the Roman Empire. How can you say the Roman Empire? I know at one point the Roman Empire had their capital in Britain, but for the most part, their capital had always been in Rome. Now, the problem of the people of Rome cannot be the same as the problem of the people in Judea, in Israel, or the problem of the people in Ethiopia, or the problem of the people in Cyrene, which is present-day Libya. So different peoples have different needs in different localities. But this northern hegemony, they've always liked a centralized government. So he went on further to say a rapid deterioration had followed the decay of the religious zeal, which has prompted the Fulani Jihad at the time when the administration was assumed by the imperial government. So we did say they started ruling in 1900 in the north, whereas in the south, they've been very prominent because of the treaty they've been signing. So they signed treaty with Obailaro, with Awujale, Alake, with Alafin. So, but whereas in the north, everything was just centralized. So if you take one, you take all. So he went on to say, now that religious zeal that the Fulani used in conquering the north was no longer there. And we saw when the Boko Haram started in 2002, 2003, up until the time it became a deadly militia in 2010. All they came in was in the name of religion. And they started kidnapping schoolgirls. Now they started kidnapping schoolboys and even men and women, market men and market women. So I don't think all those in the name of this is being done in the name of religion. I think it's being done in their own selfish interests. So he said the separate dynasty of Bonu and Chad Plain had fallen before the armies of Rabba from Wada, who at this time was looting and ravaging the country. The primitive pagan races had held their own in inaccessible fastness of the mountainous districts of the Plateau. So he described what's happened in the north. They've always been fighting. And then he talked about the south, that the south has been trolled by fetish worship, hideous ordeal of witchcraft, human sacrifice, and twin murder. So we've been murdering twins. We've been involved in fetish worship, in paganism, idolatry, witchcraft, and several other things. And he talked about the great Igbo race of the east of the Niger, we are about 3 million people, and their cognate tribes have not developed beyond the stage of savagery. So they were still killing people and murdering anyhow. Whereas in the West, so he described the West, which is supposed to be central anyway. He talked about the Benin Kingdom. So, and linking them to the Dahomey kingdom. So he said up until 1897, the Benin was there, and they were also involved in Holocaust, which is the killing of humans for sacrifice. And then he now talked about the Yorubas, who are to the west, far west. So in talking about the Yorubas, we should notice here that he talked about the Yorubas, the Egbas, and the Jebus. So the Yorubas mainly were people, he regarded those as people from Oyo, and then the Egbas and the Jebus. So in the later document, we will see that even when Nigeria was amalgamated on the 1st of January 1914, the Egbas were not amalgamated into Nigeria. So the Egba was still a country of its own that had a separate regime with Britain. So Egba came into Nigeria in September of that same year. And it was a trick that Lugard used for them, because in his description, he said every Egba man had a gun. And no Egba king, no Alake has ever survived more than 3 years. So, and because of that, the Alake always come to Lugard to say, you have to help me, you have to save me. So Lugard now said, well, we cannot be using the Nigerian resources to save you. So for us to save you, you have to sign that you will be a part of Nigeria. Then we can deploy the forces to help you. So those were the things that Lugard, but that will come later in the document. So it described the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Bini. It described the Wadas, the Rabas. It described the Fulani. Not much mention of Hausa here. He did mention Hausa later when he said he was going to make people start learning Hausa in the north. So, but Hausa was predominantly silent in this part of. So he talked about something. So he said these Yorubas, the Egbas and the Jebus, they have evolved a fairly advanced. Look at that word. We were most governments and most democracies have 3 systems of government, but the Yorubas have operated 4 systems of government, and there was a check. There was a good system of checks and balance, so that the king was not the overall. Well, it was the overall head, but does not necessarily have the overall say. The Oyomesi, the Ogbonis, and the chiefs. So we had 4 different systems. So he said we've developed an advanced system of government in the West, which is Yoruba. So why bring another system of government to upset what we already have? So if we don't understand all these things, because all those systems, he didn't throw them away, they were still there. And then they introduced another counter-parallel system. So we now have 2 systems competing with each other. And we know that they got it through the use of force, through the use of gun. He said, apart from that, we also had middlemen. So we had people who were doing business. And he said we had acquired a smattering of education in mission schools, and we are jealous of it, and we guarded it jealously. And we prevented the Europeans from actually going into the interior of Nigeria. But our principal town in the south was Lagos and Calabar. And there were quite a few people who were educated and has practiced as doctors, barristers, and so on. So we've got engineers as far back as 19 who are actually doing things and making things work in. Mind you, Lagos had been colonized in 1861. So quite a lot of Lagosians had the opportunity to travel to Britain and back. And we have King Jaja of Opobo, who was actually the owner of Port Harcourt, who actually was able to travel from Opobo land, which is now present day Port Harcourt, to Liverpool to sell his goods and back until he was illegally arrested and taken to the southern Caribbean. But then he came back, but he died en route back to Nigeria. So that is the introduction of what's it called, Lugat's amalgamation. So it's talked about the general characteristics of Nigeria, which is the north and the south. It's talked about the ethnology. It's talked about the population. So he said the population of the north was 9 million, and the population of the south is 7.75 million, so nearly 8 million. So roughly, the population of Nigeria was between 16 to 17 million as a 1912, 1915, 1912, 1913, before the amalgamation. So if you imagine the population then, and I did a comparative study, the United Kingdom, on the other hand, in 1914, their population was around 48 million, around 48 million. Now, if you fast forward to when we got independence in 1960, our population had jumped from 16 million to about 50 million, 50, 60 million. So, and the United Kingdom, whose population was around 44, 45 million, had now become about 50 something million. So the population of Nigeria and that of United Kingdom had met in around 1960. Now, if you fast forward again to another 60 years, our population is now nearly times 3 of the population of United Kingdom. So let that sink into our head. So Britain, at the start of the century, start of the 20th century, was about 40 million. At the end of the century, was about 60 million. Nigeria at the start of the century, okay, let's say about 15 million. And at the end of the century was about 180 million. So all these individuals need resources to be utilized, because I don't believe that the life of a British is more expensive than the life of a Nigerian, or the life of a Nigerian is more expensive than the life of a Briton. Every man who is born should have equal opportunity. But we discover that the Nigerian enclave is not giving a lot of our people great opportunity. And the population is going to be rising. Now, Nigeria is we're not the third, we're the 7th most populated country in the world. So we have China, who is the first, 1.4 billion. We have India, which is about 1.2 billion. We have America, which is about 300 and something million. We have some other countries, and then we have Nigeria, which is 200 and something million. Now, it is estimated that Nigeria is actually going to be the 2nd most populated country at the end of this century. At the end of this century, they are proposing, well, it is an estimate based on United Nations studies, that Nigeria is going to be the 2nd most populated country. So China's population, which is about 1.4 billion, is going to come down to about 770,000. India's population is going to go higher a little, and that of Nigeria is going to be 2nd to about 880 million people. So imagine that 8 point something million people are born into poverty, abject poverty, every year. How many more people would be in poverty if we do not dissolve this amalgamation that happened over 100 years ago? So let's go further. He talked about the advent of British rule. So the British government, which had maintained a consul at Lagos since 1852, now obtained the cession of the island in 1861. So these are the things I explained prior. So he's just recapping what really happened about before Britain started ruling Nigeria in 1900. Uh, Mind you, before 1900, there was nothing like Nigeria. Before 1900, there was nothing like Nigeria. And in fact, okay, we could say 1900, but what happened was uh, it was even called a protectorate. So they call it Southern Protectorate. And the North, they call the Northern Protectorate. It is when they got the name in 1914, they started calling it Nigeria. There was nothing like Nigeria then. So what they had was Royal Niger Company. So a lot of people will be asking, what's that? Royal Niger Company was the one controlling that space. So that land was being owned by Royal Niger Company. So it was that land and the people that were in it that were sold to the British government. When I told us how much they sold it for, 865,000 pounds. So if you multiply it in today's money, so you could do the calculation. So £1 around that time in today's money would be around 28 pounds. So if you multiply 865 by 28, you get the equivalent of how much it will be now, which will be around 15 or 20 million in today's money. So he talked about how they obtained the island in 1861 with the sole objective of putting an end to overseas slave traffic. So the aim for coming to colonize us was to stop, I told us before, to stop the traffic. You know, when they abolished slavery in 1833, America had not abolished it until 1865. So the slave trade traffic was still flowing. So Britain was like, the only effective way was if we take our ship there to seize any American ship, seize any French ship, seize any Australia or Canada ship that is still coming to raid slaves in that places. And the Fulani were still very much active in slave raiding. Even the Yorubas too were still actively selling their brothers and sisters, their sons and daughters into slavery. So when America now enacted the Anti-Slavery Act around 1865, Britain then thought, you know what, why are we still there? Let's go back. Let's leave this island alone and let the people govern themselves. So they contemplated going back. So it was not until when the Royal Niger Company something emerged, and then there was scramble for Africa in 1884. So Britain just thought, oh, you know what? Maybe there's a bigger pie here that we're not seeing. Why are all these European countries going to Africa? Maybe Africa is the next destination of choice. So that's when Britain now said, okay, you know what? If that is the case, let's start going into the interior. So it was around that 1883, 1884, 85, 86, they started going into the interior. And even up until 1900, they were not as far as Zungeru, which is Niger State. So Britain maintained that place as their sphere of influence. So it described what really happened, which I've explained. So we'll go to the character of the British administration. So I told us that we already had our own native rule before Britain came. They only came for business. They should have just stayed as Britain and be trading with whoever. But the problem we had was We have Egba, who is on their own. We have Ijebu, who is on their own. We have Ijesha, who is on their own. We have Oyo, who is on their own. We have the Ondos. We have the Lagosians. So everybody was scattered. There is no center. So we should understand where the problem starts from. Because if we don't understand where the problem starts from, it will be difficult to understand how to solve it. So that was the problem. The Yorubas were not coordinated. If we were better coordinated and we have a better system of government, although I know the Oyo Empire was somewhat ruling many of those kingdoms, they have their ajeles. And we know that some people, when you give them power, their power could be overbearing. So you see Ijesha revolting, you see, so it was not a mutual recognition or mutual respect for each other. So if we had that, perhaps we could have said, no, we want to maintain our country. If you want to trade with us, trade with us. And today, what do we see? Which is one of the questions I keep asking, and a lot of people will say, oh no, let's throw away the monarchy, let's do this, let's do that. No, we need to form a system that would bring the Yoruba, both the monarchy, to have a mutual understanding on how the monarchical system would work in a modern 21st century Yoruba nation. Because that is where our problem started from. Because if we had all the Yoruba kingdoms as one, we could have been speaking with one voice. Not that one should throw away their throne for the other, but let's look for a system that would work. So it was because Britain took this painful exercise. It's not in this document. There's another document for that. It's about 202 pages. You see, it took them more than 20, 30 years signing treaty with each kingdoms. So Britain just thought the best thing is, what if we lump all these people together and give them one overlord? And that is what we saw happened prior to 1900, because there was no. So why is it easier for us Yoruba to accept outsider to rule us than to sit down within ourselves and say, how do we want to be ruled? And that is why I was talking about the Yoruba people having a Yoruba National Conference. Because if we have a Yoruba National Conference, the king's representatives will be there, the village heads will be there, each tribe will be there. People would come together as Yoruba and sit down and say, this is how we want to, because the British government never solved the problem. And that's the problem we're still facing till today. They never solved the problem. The only thing they just did was, for the Yoruba to exist, outsider would rule them. And that is why you will see all our Obas, they will always run to Abuja. They will always run to Abuja. They need something, they will go to Abuja. They want to cough, they will go to Abuja. They want to this, they will go to Abuja, which is supposed to be the other way around. Because Abuja is not the owner of our land. The land belongs to us. But we need to sit down and come up with a way. Many people I ask, they say, oh, no, the Obas, they have outlived their usefulness. I will not be the one to say that. I don't think they've outlived their usefulness. A lot of people say, oh, but in the UK, the UK has only one king or queen, whoever rules at the time. But one thing you don't understand is, in the UK, we have so many titular heads. We have the Duchy of Lancaster, we have the Prince of Wales, we have the Duke of Edinburgh, we have the Duke of Wellington, we have the Duke of York, the Duke of Lancaster. All those are supposed to be traditional heads. So all those are still existing till today. So even though the kingdom has come round to say, let's have this person represent us, who is going to be the king or the queen, they still have all those small, I will not say small, but they are small now, but they were holding a title of a regional lord in those days. So for those who say, okay, so how do we reconcile the situation between, say, the Alake and the Alafin, or the Alafin and the Oni, or the Oni and the Aujales and things? Although we all as Yoruba recognize the office of the Oni Risha as the real base of Oduduwa. And we recognize Alaafin Oyo as the uh, political sort of political head of the Yoruba kingdom. We Yoruba need, as a matter of urgency, to come together to reconcile those. And the good thing is, we see that the majority of the monarchs are working together. We see the Ooni and the Alaafin together. So those things, those who are close to them can be able to say, see, there is a serious issue the Yoruba people need to identify. Because for those who are even clamoring for restructuring, not that I'm a proponent for restructuring, we still need to have a titular head for who the buck stops at his table. So for Britain now, we have the monarchical system, and the Queen, even though is the head of government, is not responsible for the day-to-day affairs of the United Kingdom. All those are for the Prime Minister, who is being elected by the people. So we could have a similar arrangement where we have all the kings come together and say, yes, we are all kings in our own domain. But for the purpose of Yoruba land, King A or King B would be the political head of government. And then the country can now, so we might now have kingdoms. So kings will be in their own domain. Now we have kings who have no kingdom, who have no domain. And you wonder, is it just a title? Some people will have one street and they say they are king of that area and start terrorizing. It's because there's no law, there is nothing. Nigeria itself is not fit for purpose. So if we can solve that one, that will be number one. And then we can then have the office of Prime Minister, because majority of us don't know that this is what caused problem for the Yorubas, because Awolowo was a very good man and he did quite a lot of good things. But because this structure were not in place, when the tenure of Awolowo ended, our father, Timothy Towotowo Dahukowo, we had Akintola coming, and then we had the Oni as the governor then. So it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear how these things would work. So we saw a situation where the governor, which is Oni, which is supposed to be the head of the Yoruba government, said, okay, let the house, whatever the house passed, and the house said they passed a vote of no confidence on the premier. And the governor said, okay, you have to go. And the premier said, no, I can't go. You have to go because I'm the premier. I was elected. So there was a tussle. But if we have all these things now documented, review it thoroughly, and let every Yoruba person have a copy to say, this is how we want to be governed, that would help us. Because God forbid we don't have all these things in place and we go into a Yoruba nation. That will be another fight we will fight again for another generation. So it would be nice to have those in place, because we never solved, the British did not solve the problem. When we got our independence, it was not solved. And now it's even become a bigger problem, which whether we like it or not, we have to solve. So if we go to the character of British administration, so this is what Lugard said. He said the divergent conditions which I have described, so which Lugard speaking now, the geography, the ethnography, the climate, together with the very different manner in which the two countries Now, you see what Lugard is saying. He said the two countries, so this is two countries now, had come under the direct control of the crown, had, as was to be expected, profoundly influenced the form which British administration took in each. So what he's saying is the two countries are different. We've got the purer Negroes, you've got Negroids of other stock, you've got the Fulanis. He said they're just different. Trying to bring them together is not going to work. So, and the North was using a centralized system of government. So it was convenient for Britain. Whereas for us in the Yorubas land, they had to go sign treaty with Ilaro, sign treaty with Ijesha, sign treaty with Alafi, sign treaty. So it was confusing for them. Who is even the head? Who is going to be the head? This one is head here, this one is head here, this one is head here. So we are understanding a bit how our problem came to be and how we're still having the problem. But what is now saying is, because of all these differences and the differences, he did not allow the two countries to meet. He did not allow the two countries to meet. So he married the two. It's just like, oh, I'm going to marry these two countries, but I'm not going to make them know that they are married. That's basically what is being showcased here. Thank you, Yoruba Lives Matter. Ìgbéyàwó tipátipá, máa fẹ́ yín tipátipá bí ẹ fẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ kọ́. And none of the two parties we are consulted. It's just you have to be amalgamated. Everything was done in London, not even to the natives. And so the early administration in the South was confined to the coastal areas, and that of the North was in Zungeru. So they started penetrating into the interior little by little, little by little, little by little. So he said in the North, their penetration was very problematic. Because the chartered company, they were restricted by financial constraints, and they have been compelled to deal with the chiefs, which was very difficult. So sometimes they have to go and meet the chiefs, whether they agree for them to sell their rubber was one of their major things they were trading in. So they had to go and meet the chiefs, whether the chiefs will agree or not agree. And they had a very big fight with the French. Mind you, French was colonizing the top, even from Cameroon to present-day Niger Republic, which was French Sudan, and up to Dahomey. So they had this fracas with France as well. So that matter was settled between 1888 and 1889. So, but in order to settle the fight, Lugard had to create an army. So he had to create an army. He called that army the West Africa Frontier Force. So, and those army, he brought them from their campaign in Ashanti region in Ghana. So, and their task was to deal with the Muslim emirates in the north, who were despots in the north, basically. So he said in 1902, there was a particular slave raider in the north. They call him Katangora. He said Katangora had boasted that if he would die like a cat with a mouse in its mouth, and that if they will kill him, he will have at least he will have a slave in his mouth when he is dying. So I've got limited time now. So he talked about Nupe, Benue, Borno, being overrun by rabbi. So, and then he talked about Egyptian Sudan. So, if we look at, so that I'm on page 7 now, he talked about Egyptian Sudan, and those places have been. We all know that Egypt was part of British Empire, and what we know as Egypt now used to contain both South and North Sudan. So Britain amalgamated the South and the North of, well, North and South Sudan were together. So Britain amalgamated the Sudan and Egypt together, but they broke up in 1965, 1st of January. So those two countries broke up, and their broke up helped to drive Britain Britain away. So he talked about what happened in 1903, the fall of this great, and convinced this Sokoto Emirate. So when it had been occupied by the forces, the British administration was faced with the insistent urgency of creating a new organization, of developing a new native policy without delay. So this is when they already took over the northern protectorate. So this that's basically the system they were using, and the necessity of securing means wherewith to carry the administration was no less insistent than the reorganization of the native administration. There was no revenue to be got from spirits. So he was talking in the north now. There was no revenue to get because even up to today, we see that because of the prevalence of Sharia in the north, in Kano, basically, not only are you not only not going to get revenue in spirits or alcohol, they were what is it called? They will collapse your business, destroy all your alcohol and everything. Whereas if we go into the south in our next episode, which we'll discuss from Monday, which was the necessity for amalgamation itself. So the reason for amalgamation itself was financial, was finance. So it's just for the money. So there was no revenue in spirit, there was nothing. So the North was basically being funded by the British taxpayers. And that was the reason why they called Lugard. I told us that Lugard was in Hong Kong when they called him to come and amalgamate the North and the South. So Britain was funding the North to the tune of 314,000 pounds, which in today's money would be like 9.6 to 10 million pounds in today's money. And all those money was being used. I told us about the West African Frontier Forces. All those money were just used on those military to maintain law and order in the North. And that is the North that is still giving Nigeria problem. So it's just saying in those days, Britain was using British taxpayers' money to fund military campaign. Whereas in the South, we were not making trouble. We don't have any fights. And we were making 1.138 million pounds in taxes in spirits annually, which is nearly 20 million in today's money. So you see such dichotomy. So I'm going to end it here for today, and we'll continue next week. So we'll look at the figures again from next week, which is the necessity for amalgamation. It's purely financial. It has nothing to do with whatever. It's just Britain was spending this money on a military campaign, and here is the another colony. They just thought, why not join the two of them together and let's save the British taxpayers. So the British taxpayers were spared, but the Yoruba taxpayers were not spared. Thank you. God bless you.